I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and imagine something with me. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that every single thing you've ever wanted, every dream you've whispered to yourself in the dark, every secret hope you've been too afraid to say out loud, has already been prepared for you. Not someday, not if you're lucky, not if you work hard enough or sacrifice enough or prove yourself worthy enough, but right now, already done, already wrapped up with your name on it, sitting in an invisible storehouse that exists beyond what your physical eyes can see. Now imagine that the only thing standing between you and that reality is not your bank account, not your education, not your past mistakes, not even your current circumstances. The only thing standing between you and everything you desire is the way you've been taught to think about what's possible for you. I'm going to tell you something that will sound absolutely insane to the practical mind, something that will make the skeptics roll their eyes and the realists shake their heads. But I've seen it work so many times, in so many lives, including my own, that I can no longer stay quiet about it. What I'm about to share with you isn't just about winning the lottery, though yes, we're going to talk about that. This is about understanding a law, a spiritual law, that's been operating in your life since the moment you took your first breath, whether you knew about it or not. You see, most people go through their entire lives believing they're at the mercy of chance. They buy lottery tickets and cross their fingers. They wish on stars. They pray desperate prayers that sound more like begging than belief. And then when nothing changes, when the big win doesn't come, when life continues to feel like a struggle, they decide that luck is for other people. That abundance is for other people. That magic, real magic, doesn't exist in this cold, hard world. But what if I told you that's backwards? What if I told you that you've been playing the game of life with the rules reversed, and that's precisely why you keep losing? What if the lottery, that jackpot you're dreaming about, is actually just a symbol, a physical manifestation of a much bigger truth about how this universe actually works? My name is Florence, and I've spent my life studying the invisible laws that govern our visible world. I've watched the broken become whole. I've seen the bankrupt become prosperous. I've witnessed the hopeless discover joy so profound it transformed everyone around them. And I'm going to tell you exactly how it happens, and more importantly, how it can happen for you. The first thing you must understand is this: your words are not idle chatter. They are not meaningless sounds that drift away into nothingness. Every word you speak is a decree, a command sent forth into the invisible realm where all things take form before they manifest in your physical reality. I remember a woman who came to me, weeping, clutching her handbag as though it contained her last hope. "Mrs. Shinn," she said, "I'm always sick. I've been sick for years. My body simply refuses to cooperate." And there it was, did you hear it? My sickness. My body refuses. She had claimed it, owned it, made it her intimate companion through the power of her own words. I looked at her and said, "My dear, stop claiming that sickness as yours. You're sending out invitations to illness with every sentence you speak." She looked shocked, as though I'd suggested something radical, but I continued. "From this moment forward, you must speak only of health, vitality, and perfect functioning. Even if your body screams otherwise, your words must paint the picture of what you desire, not what you see," she protested. "Of course, but I am sick. Isn't that just lying?" And here's where so many people stumble. They confuse speaking their truth with speaking truth itself. Your current circumstances are not the truth. They are simply facts. Temporary situations that can and will change when you align your words with divine principle. I taught her to say instead, "I am healthy, whole, and radiantly alive. Every cell in my body functions in perfect harmony." She felt foolish at first, speaking these words while feeling terrible. But she persisted, and within weeks, something shifted. Her doctor was baffled by her sudden improvement. But I wasn't. I'd seen this transformation hundreds of times. You see, the universe doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you don't want. It only responds to what you're claiming through your speech and thought. When you say, "I'm so broke," the universe says, "Yes, you are. Let me arrange circumstances to confirm that for you." When you declare, "I never have enough," divine intelligence takes that as your order and delivers accordingly. This is why I say with such conviction, Your word is your wand. It is the most potent instrument you possess, and most people wield it unconsciously, carelessly, as if they were children playing with matches in a room full of gasoline. I had a student come to me years ago, utterly bewildered by her circumstances. "Florence," she said, "I don't understand why nothing ever works out for me. I try so hard, but I'm always disappointed." Right there. Do you hear it? Nothing ever works out for me. I'm always disappointed. She was speaking her reality into existence with every breath, and then wondering why her life reflected exactly what she declared. I gave her an assignment. For 1 week, she was to become a guardian at the gate of her own mouth. Every time she caught herself speaking lack, limitation, or fear, she was to immediately cancel it with a statement of truth. That's not true. The truth is, everything is working together for my highest good. At first, she thought it was silly, superstitious even, but I told her what I'm telling you now. This is not superstition. This is spiritual law, as reliable as the law of gravity. Test it and see. Within 3 weeks, her entire world had shifted. Not because circumstances magically changed overnight, but because she stopped energizing the pattern of failure and disappointment. She stopped giving it her attention, her emotion, her life force. And when you stop watering weeds, they die. When you start watering seeds of good, they flourish. Now, here's what most people miss: the lag time. There's a gestation period between your word and its manifestation. You don't plant a seed on Monday and expect roses on Tuesday. Yet, in the realm of thought and speech, people give up after a day or two of affirmative statements because they don't see immediate results. The truth is, the invisible world operates on its own timeline, not yours. Your job isn't to micromanage the how or the when. Your job is to remain faithful to the word you've spoken. I've watched people speak their good into existence with such conviction, only to cancel it out 3 days later with doubt-filled conversations. They'll affirm prosperity in the morning, then spend their evening commiserating with friends about how broke they are. Do you see the contradiction? You cannot build and demolish simultaneously and expect to see results. This is where most people stumble. They treat spiritual law like a light switch they can flick on and off at will. But consciousness doesn't work that way. Once you've set a spiritual law into motion through your word, you must maintain the vibration that matches it. Think of it like tuning a radio. You don't tune into your favorite station, hear one song, then twist the dial back to static and wonder why the music stopped. Yet this is precisely what people do with their words. They speak faith, then immediately tune back into the frequency of fear and limitation. I knew a woman who desperately wanted to sell her house. The market was slow, and she'd been trying for months. When she came to me, I asked her what she'd been saying about the house. "Oh," she replied, "I tell everyone it's impossible to sell anything in this market. Everyone's in the same boat." There was your problem right there. Her words were saturated with the consciousness of impossibility. I instructed her to stop discussing the house altogether except to say, "The right buyer is being led to my house now. Divine intelligence is handling this sale." She resisted at first. It felt dishonest somehow, given what her eyes were showing her, but she agreed to the experiment. Within 2 weeks, a buyer appeared, someone who'd driven past the house dozens of times before, but suddenly felt compelled to inquire. The sale went through without a single complication. What changed? Not the market, not the house. Her words changed, and therefore her consciousness changed, and the invisible rearranged itself to match her new mental picture. Now, many of you are thinking, "But Florence, I've been saying affirmations. I've been thinking positively. Why hasn't anything changed?" And I'll tell you exactly why. Because you're saying the words with your mouth, while your heart is screaming something entirely different. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your conviction. It responds to the feeling tone beneath the words. You can stand in front of a mirror and say, "I am prosperous," 1,000 times. But if underneath you're thinking, "Who am I kidding? Look at my bank account," then you're simply wasting your breath. This is why intellectual understanding alone changes nothing. You can read every metaphysical book ever written, and believe me, many people do and still remain stuck in the same circumstances. Because reading is not embodiment. Knowing is not being. I once worked with a man who could quote scripture backwards and forwards. He knew every spiritual principle there was to know. And yet he was drowning in debt, miserable in his marriage, stuck in work he despised. "Florence," he said to me, "I know the truth. Why isn't it working?" And I said to him, "You know the truth the way you know Paris exists. But you've never been there. You've never walked its streets. You've never breathed its air. Knowing about something and knowing something are two entirely different things. So the real work, is not in accumulating more knowledge. It's in closing the gap between what you say and what you believe. It's in bringing your inner conversation into alignment with your outer declarations. And how do you do this? Not through force, not through willpower, not through gritting your teeth and trying to believe something your entire being rejects. You do it through what I call acting as if. You behave as the person who already has what you desire would behave. Not in some fake, performative way, but genuinely stepping into that consciousness, trying it on like a new coat until it fits. If you desire prosperity, you must think prosperously before the money arrives. You must feel the relief, the ease, the freedom of prosperity, now not when your circumstances change, but before they change. This is the secret that most people never grasp. I once knew a woman who wanted desperately to move from her cramped apartment into a beautiful home. Every day, she complained about her small space. She resented her neighbors. She criticized the peeling paint and the narrow hallways. And do you know what happened? She remained there for 7 more years, growing more bitter with each passing month. Then something shifted. She began a different practice. Each morning, she would close her eyes and give thanks not for the home she wanted, but as though she already lived there. She felt the sunlight streaming through larger windows. She imagined walking through spacious rooms. She blessed her current apartment and said, "Thank you for sheltering me until my greater good arrives." Within 3 months, an unexpected inheritance came through a distant relative she barely knew existed. Within 6 months, she held the keys to a home that exceeded even her visualizations. This is not magic. This is law. You see, gratitude is the bridge between where you are and where you wish to be. Complaint keeps you anchored to your present circumstances. It is the nail that fastens you to your limitation. But gratitude? Gratitude loosens the soil around your roots so you can be transplanted into richer ground. When you dare to give thanks before the manifestation appears, you send a clear signal to the invisible forces that govern this universe. You declare, "I know this is mine. I know it is already done in the spiritual realm. I am simply waiting for the physical world to catch up with what has already been established." This requires tremendous faith, I grant you. It feels foolish to thank the universe for money when your bank account shows a deficit. It seems absurd to feel grateful for perfect health when your body aches. But remember, the spiritual always precedes the physical. The feeling must come first. The faith must precede the evidence. Let me tell you plainly, you cannot wait for proof before you believe. The very act of waiting for proof is what delays your demonstration. You must believe first, feel it first, give thanks first. Then, and only then, does the universe rearrange itself to match your inner conviction. This is why I tell my students, act as if, speak as if, feel as if. Not from desperation or pretense, but from the quiet, knowing that what you desire is already yours in the realm of infinite possibility. Your only task is to claim it, to accept it, to make room for it in your consciousness. When you begin to live from this consciousness, the entire world shifts. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed your relationship to it. You are no longer a beggar at the table of life, hoping for scraps. You are the invited guest, seated at the banquet, fully aware that everything on the table has been prepared for you. This is where the magic truly begins. I once knew a woman who had lived in poverty for years. Not just financial poverty, but a poverty of spirit. She believed herself unworthy of love, of comfort, of beauty. Her surroundings reflected this belief perfectly. Her home was sparse, cold, joyless. She wore the same drab clothes day after day, not because she lacked the means to buy others, but because somewhere deep within, she had decided she didn't deserve anything better. One day, something within her awakened. Perhaps it was exhaustion with her own suffering. Perhaps it was a glimpse of truth that broke through the clouds of her thinking. Whatever the cause, she made a decision. She would no longer live as though she were unworthy. She would act as if she were already the woman she longed to be. She began small. She bought flowers for her table. Not expensive arrangements, just simple blossoms from the market. But she placed them there as if she were a woman who deserved beauty in her life. She cleared out her closet and kept only the clothes that made her feel dignified. She walked differently, spoke differently, not from affectation, but from a quiet inner shift. Within months, her entire life had transformed. A better position came to her. New friendships blossomed. Opportunities appeared that had always been there, but that she had been blind to because she wasn't vibrating at the frequency to perceive them. The universe had not suddenly decided to favor her. She had simply aligned herself with what was always available. This is the power of assumption. This is the power of living as if. But here is what you must understand. This is not about pretending. It is not about lying to yourself or denying your current circumstances. It is about choosing which reality you will feed with your attention. You can acknowledge where you are while simultaneously knowing where you are going. Consider the gardener who plants seeds in spring. She does not stand over the soil, wringing her hands, demanding to see the roots form beneath the surface. She does not dig up the seeds every morning to check their progress. She waters them, she tends the soil, she trusts the process. And in trusting, she allows the natural law of growth to do its perfect work. You must become like that gardener with your own desires. Plant the seed of your intention clearly in the soil of consciousness. Water it with your faith, tend it with your attention, and then, and this is crucial, stop digging it up with your doubt. Every time you say, "I wonder if this will really work," you are pulling up the seed to examine it. Every time you look at your current circumstances and say, "Well, I guess nothing is changing," you are trampling the tender shoots just beginning to break through the soil. Your impatience is not a sign of strong desire, it is a sign of weak faith. The universe operates on a different timeline than your anxious mind demands. What seems like delay to you is often divine preparation. You are being made ready for what you have asked for. The channels are being cleared, the obstacles are being moved, the people who will help you are being brought into alignment. All of this is happening in the invisible before it can manifest in the visible. I knew a woman who desired a new position in her field, one that would utilize her gifts more fully and compensate her more generously. She spoke the word clearly. She held the vision. But weeks passed, then months, and nothing seemed to shift. Her friends told her to be realistic, to lower her expectations. But she held steady. She continued to prepare herself as if the position were already on its way. She updated her skills, she refined her presentation, she acted as the person who already held such a role would act. Then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, she received a call. A position had opened, not just any position, but one so perfectly suited to her that it seemed designed specifically for her talents. And here is the important part. The person who hired her later told her that the position had not even existed 3 months earlier. It had been created in response to a need that had only recently emerged in the organization. Do you see? While she was waiting, while she was holding her vision steady, the universe was literally creating the position for her. It was forming in the invisible realm, taking shape, gathering the necessary elements. Had she given up in despair after 2 months, she would have abandoned her creation just before its birth. This is the principle of gestation that operates throughout all of nature. You plant a seed in the ground, and you don't dig it up every morning to see if it's growing. You water it, you tend it, you trust the process. The farmer doesn't stand over his field wringing his hands in anxiety. He knows that between the planting and the harvest, there is a season of invisible growth. The roots must establish themselves in darkness before the shoot can break through into light. Your desires, your visions, your spoken words, these too have their season of gestation. And here is what most people don't understand. The gestation period is not idle time. It's not the universe being slow or indifferent. It's the period of preparation, both in the outer world and within yourself. During this waiting period, you are being prepared to receive. If the woman had gotten that position immediately, before she had learned to hold her vision steady in the face of doubt, before she had strengthened her faith muscles through practice, she might not have had the inner capacity to hold it. She might have received it in fear and lost it just as quickly. The universe is always working on 2 fronts simultaneously. It's arranging the outer circumstances, moving people into position, creating opportunities, dissolving obstacles. And it's also working on you, strengthening your faith, dissolving your doubts, expanding your capacity to receive and hold what you've asked for. I've watched this principle play out hundreds of times. A woman wants marriage, and during the waiting period, she discovers and heals her fear of abandonment. A man wants a business opportunity, and during the waiting period, he learns discipline and releases his tendency toward impulsiveness. The delay wasn't punishment or denial, it was preparation. This is why you must never judge by appearances during the waiting period. When it looks like nothing is happening, everything is happening. When it seems your prayers have gone unheard, they're already being answered in the invisible realm. The gap between your word and its manifestation is not emptiness, it's the creative process itself. I declare to you now, what you have spoken in faith is already done in spirit. The work is complete. What you're experiencing now is simply the time it takes for the spiritual reality to crystallize into physical form. You're not waiting for God to decide whether to give it to you. You're waiting for your faith to bring it through the veil between the invisible and the visible. And this is where so many of us stumble. We look at our bank account, our empty inbox, our unchanged circumstances, and we think, nothing's happening. It's not working. But that's like a farmer digging up his seeds every morning to check if they're growing. The very act of digging them up prevents the growth you're so desperately looking for. Your work now is to live from the end result. To walk as if you've already received. To speak as if it's already done. This isn't pretending, this is aligning yourself with the spiritual reality that already exists. I knew a woman who needed to move out of a cramped apartment that was making her ill. She had no money, no prospects, and everyone told her it was impossible. But she began to thank God for her beautiful new home. She spoke about it in present tense. My home is filled with light. My home has space for me to breathe and create. She even packed a few boxes. Her friends thought she'd lost her mind. Where was she going to go? How would she pay for it? But she refused to entertain those questions with fear. She simply maintained her spiritual vision. Within 3 weeks, a friend of a friend mentioned a house-sitting opportunity, a beautiful home that needed someone responsible for 6 months, with an option to stay longer at minimal rent. The owner was traveling and wanted someone who would truly appreciate the space. This woman didn't create the opportunity through struggle. She didn't manipulate circumstances. She simply held so steadily to the vision that when the bridge appeared between the invisible and visible, she was ready to walk across it. You see, the universe is constantly rearranging itself to match your inner conviction. Not your wishes, not your fears, your conviction. What you're absolutely certain about becomes the organizing principle of your experience. So, when you're in that waiting period, and there will be waiting periods, your job isn't to figure out how it will happen. Your job is to refuse entrance to doubt, to guard your vision like a sentinel guards a gate, to keep your inner conversation aligned with your desired outcome. When worry knocks, you don't open the door and invite it in for tea. You don't sit with it and listen to all its dire predictions. You recognize it as an intruder, and you shut the door firmly. This isn't denial. This is discrimination. You're not pretending challenges don't exist. You're refusing to give them a seat at the table of your consciousness. You're declining to rehearse disaster. I've watched people destroy perfectly good manifestations through the simple act of worrying. They plant the seed, water it with intention, and then dig it up every day to see if it's growing. They suffocate their own harvest with anxiety. The seed doesn't need your worry. It needs your faith. Think of a farmer. Once he's planted his crops, does he stand in the field wringing his hands? Does he lie awake, wondering if the seeds remember how to sprout? Does he dig them up to check their progress? No, he trusts the process. He goes about his work. He prepares for the harvest. You must do the same with your desires. Plant them in consciousness through clear intention. Water them with gratitude and expectation. Then leave them alone to do what seeds do naturally grow. Your constant checking, your perpetual doubt, your anxious monitoring, these are not signs of care. They're signs of faithlessness. And faithlessness is toxic to manifestation. I want you to understand something crucial. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your conviction. You can affirm abundance all day long, but if underneath those words is a trembling uncertainty, If your inner voice is whispering, "But what if it doesn't work?" then you're not affirming, you're contradicting. You're trying to build with one hand while tearing down with the other. The power is in the feeling beneath the words, the unshakable knowing, the quiet certainty that what you've claimed in consciousness must appear in form. This is why I say, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Don't wait for evidence to feel successful. Feel successful now, and the evidence will follow. Don't wait for the money to feel abundant. Feel abundant now, and money will find its way to you. This is why so many people struggle financially. They're trying to feel good about money. Times after times it arrives. They say, when I get that raise, then I'll relax. When my business succeeds, then I'll celebrate. But this is backwards thinking. Your inner state is not the result of your circumstances. Your circumstances are the result of your inner state. I knew a woman who was drowning in debt. Every morning, she woke up with that tight feeling in her chest, the anxiety of bills unpaid, creditors calling, her bank account gasping for air. She would check her balance obsessively, as if staring at those numbers would somehow make them grow. And each time she looked, she felt worse. She was affirming her lack with every fearful glance. One day, she came to me desperate. "What do I do?" she asked. "How do I get out of this hole?" I told her something that shocked her. Stop checking your bank account for a while, and every time you think about money, I want you to say, "I am supplied by infinite abundance. My needs are already met." Feel grateful as though the money has already arrived. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "But that's not true," she protested. "The bills are real. The debt is real." "Yes," I said, "but your fear is making it worse. Your worry is a prayer for more lack. Change your inner state and watch what happens." She decided to trust the process. Every morning, instead of anxious checking, she spent 5 minutes in gratitude. She thanked the universe for her supply. She walked as though she was already provided for. She stopped talking about her problems and started speaking only about solutions and blessings. Within 2 weeks, unexpected money came. A refund she'd forgotten about. A client who finally paid an old invoice. A small freelance opportunity that landed in her lap. None of it was dramatic, but it was steady. The universe was responding to her new vibration. Within 3 months, her debt was cut in half. Within 6 months, she was completely free. But here's what she told me that moved me most. The money didn't change my life. Changing how I felt about money changed my life. Even before the money came, I felt different, lighter, more peaceful. And that's when everything shifted. You see, abundance is not something you chase. It's something you allow. And you allow it by embodying it now, in this present moment, regardless of what your bank account says. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There was a woman who came to me once, desperate. She had been unemployed for months. Bills were piling up. Her savings were gone. She felt like a failure. Like she had done something wrong. Like the universe had forgotten her. I looked at her and I said, "Do you want to know why the money hasn't come?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Because every day," I told her, "you wake up and the first thing you do is count what you don't have. You rehearse your poverty. You speak it, you feel it, you wear it like a cloak. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, keeps giving you more reasons to feel that way." She looked confused. "But it's true," she said. "I am poor right now." "Yes," I said, "but you don't have to be poor in consciousness. That's the difference." I gave her an assignment. Every morning, before her feet touched the floor, she was to say out loud, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me, in great avalanches of abundance." She was skeptical, but she was also desperate, and desperation, sometimes, is the doorway to surrender. She did it, every single morning, and at first, nothing happened. Her bills didn't disappear, no checks arrived in the mail. But something else began to shift. She started to feel different, lighter, more hopeful. She stopped obsessing over every dollar. She stopped the mental torture of replaying her mistakes. And then, within 3 weeks, she got a call. A former colleague wanted to hire her for a project. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid well, better than well. And it led to another opportunity, and then another. Within 2 months, she had more work than she could handle. Was it the affirmation? Was it coincidence? Was it just timing? I'll tell you what it was. It was alignment. She stopped blocking her good with fear. She stopped pushing abundance away with her words and her thoughts. She opened the channel. And once that channel was open, the universe could rush in. And what happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Not in the way we often imagine miracles with trumpets and celestial choirs, but in the quiet, persistent way that life reorganizes itself when we stop interfering with its natural flow. Within weeks, a distant relative she'd barely spoken to in years passed away and left her a small inheritance. Not a fortune, mind you, but enough to clear her debts and give her breathing room. A month later, her employer offered her a position she hadn't even applied for, one that paid nearly double her previous salary. And the people who owed her money? They began to pay. One by one, checks arrived in her mailbox, some with apologetic notes, some without explanation at all. Now, I want you to understand something crucial here. The universe didn't suddenly decide to favor her. The universe had always been ready to favor her. What changed was her willingness to receive. She had been like a woman standing in a river, dying of thirst, because she refused to cup her hands and drink. The water was always there. She simply had to accept it. This is the secret that eludes so many. Affirmations are not about convincing God or the universe of what you want. They're about convincing times you asterisk. They're about reprogramming the subconscious mind that's been running on old, corrupted software. Software installed by parents who meant well but knew no better, by teachers who repeated what they'd been taught, by a society that profits from your sense of lack. When you say, "I am a magnet for prosperity," you're not casting a spell on the cosmos. You're casting a spell on yourself. You're breaking the hypnosis of limitation. You're waking up from the collective dream of scarcity into the reality of abundance. And here's what makes this so powerful. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue. It doesn't debate. It simply accepts what you repeatedly tell it as truth, and then sets about making that truth manifest in your physical reality. It's like a faithful servant who takes your orders without question. If you constantly tell it you're broke, it will find ways to keep you broke. If you tell it you're abundant, it will find ways to make you abundant. This is why consistency matters. One affirmation spoken in a moment of inspiration won't override years of negative conditioning. But affirmations spoken daily, with feeling, with conviction, with the emotional intensity of knowing they're already true, these rewire your mental circuitry. These reshape your energetic field. These change everything. I've watched people transform their entire financial reality in weeks, not through harder work, but through consistent reprogramming of their mental atmosphere. A woman came to me drowning in debt, working 3 jobs, barely sleeping. Her thoughts were a constant loop of fear. I'll never get out of this. I'm buried alive. There's no way forward. I gave her one affirmation to speak every morning and night. Money flows to me easily and constantly from expected and unexpected sources. She resisted at first. But that's not true, she said. I'm broke. Speak it anyway, I told her. Speak it until your subconscious believes it more than your bank account denies it. Within 2 weeks, an old friend called offering her a position that paid more than all 3 jobs combined. Within a month, she received an unexpected tax refund she'd forgotten about. Within 3 months, the debt that had suffocated her for years was manageable, then nearly gone. Magic? No. Mental law. She stopped broadcasting the frequency of lack. She stopped magnetizing more debt with debt consciousness. She began vibrating at the frequency of abundance. And abundance answered. Your words are not meaningless sounds. They are creative forces. They are broadcasting stations. They are magnetic fields, pulling experiences toward you or pushing them away. When you say, "I always get sick this time of year," you're placing an order with the universe. You're programming your body. You're activating the law that says, "As within, so without." When you say instead, "My body is divinely protected and radiantly healthy," you cancel that old order. You reprogram the pattern. You shift the magnetic field. This isn't about pretending. It's about declaring truth at a higher level than appearances suggest. The person who says, "I'm so tired," becomes more tired. The person who says, Infinite energy flows through me now, taps into reserves they didn't know existed. I've seen this principle work in the most practical ways. A woman once told me she always fell sick before important events. "It's just my pattern," she said, as if it were written in stone. I asked her to change her words. Instead of saying, "I always get sick when I'm stressed," she began to affirm, "My body is strong and resilient in every situation." Within weeks, she attended 3 major gatherings without a single ailment. The pattern broke because the mental mold was shattered. Your subconscious mind is extraordinarily literal. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "Are you sure about that?" It simply accepts what you consistently declare and sets about making it true in your experience. This is why casual complaints are so dangerous. You think you're just venting, but you're actually giving orders to the most powerful creative force within you. I knew a man who joked constantly about being broke. He'd laugh about it with friends, make it part of his personality. "That's just how I am, always broke." And indeed, he was. Not because he lacked opportunity, but because he had commanded his subconscious to maintain that condition. When he finally understood this, he stopped the jokes immediately. He began to say, "Money flows to me easily and constantly." The shift in his finances was so rapid, it startled him. This isn't about pretending, it's about prophecy. You are prophesying your own future with every word. When you say, "I can't afford that," you're not just stating a fact, you're placing an order with the universe. When you say, "I'm not good at this," you're instructing your mind to ensure you remain not good at it. The way out is through deliberate, conscious speech. You must become your own guardian, standing watch over the words that leave your mouth. This takes practice. You'll catch yourself mid-complaint, mid-worry, mid-declaration of lack. Good. That awareness is the first step. Then, pause. Rephrase. State what you want, not what you fear. This is the practice of consciousness. This is the discipline that separates the casual dreamer from the deliberate creator. Because here's what most people don't realize. Every word you speak is a command to your subconscious mind. Every statement is an order being carried out, right now, in the invisible realm, where all things take form before they manifest in your physical world. When you say, "I hope I don't mess this up," your subconscious doesn't hear hope, it hears the command, "Mess this up." And it goes to work immediately, arranging circumstances to fulfill that order. When you declare, "I'm so afraid of being broke," your subconscious mind doesn't register your fear as a warning. It registers broke as your chosen destination and begins steering you directly toward it. This isn't punishment. This isn't some cruel cosmic joke. It's simply law. Your subconscious mind is completely impersonal. It doesn't judge your words as good or bad. It simply executes them with absolute fidelity. Think of it like this. If you walked into a restaurant and told the waiter, "I really hope you don't bring me burnt chicken," what do you think would show up at your table? The waiter would be utterly confused, but if he followed your words literally, you'd probably get burnt chicken, because that's what you described in detail. Your subconscious mind is that waiter. It brings you exactly what you order, exactly as you describe it. So we must become conscious of our orders. We must listen to ourselves speak. We must notice the subtle ways we're commanding lack when we want abundance, sickness when we want health, rejection when we want love. And then, with great gentleness and great firmness, we must correct course. Not once, not twice, but continuously, persistently, until speaking in the language of what we desire becomes our new nature. I've seen this transformation in my own life. There was a season when I caught myself saying, "I can't afford that," dozens of times a day. It was unconscious, automatic, but each time I said it, I was affirming poverty as my reality. So I made a decision. Every single time those words started to form, I stopped. I replaced them with, "Money flows to me easily and constantly." At first, it felt like a lie. My logical mind screamed at me that I was delusional, but I kept going. I said it when I opened an empty wallet. I said it when bills arrived. I said it before bed and first thing in the morning. Within 2 weeks, something shifted. A client I hadn't heard from in months reached out with a project. Then another. A refund I'd completely forgotten about arrived in the mail. Small amounts, yes, but the flow had begun. The dam was breaking. Here's what most people don't realize about affirmations. They're not about convincing the universe. The universe doesn't need convincing. It's about reprogramming your own consciousness, about changing the frequency you're broadcasting. Every thought is an instruction to your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is the builder of your reality. When you say, "I can't afford it," your subconscious accepts this as a command. It immediately goes to work, creating circumstances that match this belief. It closes your eyes to opportunities. It makes you overlook resources. It creates a filtering system that only allows you to see evidence of lack. But when you deliberately choose a different statement, when you say, "I am open to receiving this or something better," you give your subconscious an entirely different instruction. Now it begins to work in your favor. It heightens your awareness. It draws your attention to possibilities. It orchestrates what we call coincidences, but are actually the natural result of aligned consciousness. I had a student who wanted to travel but constantly said, "I'll never be able to afford to go to Europe." She said it so often it became her identity. When I asked her to stop saying it for just 30 days, she looked at me like I'd asked her to fly to the moon. But she agreed. For 30 days, every time the thought came, she said instead, "I am traveling the world with ease and joy." Within 2 weeks, she called me, breathless. A magazine wanted to send her to photograph a wedding in Portugal. All expenses paid, plus her fee. She hadn't even pitched them. They found her through an old blog post she'd written years ago. Within 6 weeks, she had assignments in 3 countries. "I don't understand," she kept saying. "Nothing in my circumstances changed. I didn't suddenly get more talented or more connected. But everything had changed." She stopped being her own barrier. See, the universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. And what you are is determined by what you habitually think and speak. You can want abundance all day long, but if you're constantly saying, "I can't afford it," you're not in the vibration of abundance. You're in the vibration of lack, and lack produces more lack, as surely as apple seeds produce apple trees. This is why affirmations feel ridiculous to so many people. They say the words, but underneath, they're thinking, "This is stupid. Nothing's going to change." And they're right, because the words don't have the power. The feeling behind the words has the power. Faith isn't something you manufacture. Faith is something you uncover by removing the layers of fear and doubt that cover it. And how do you remove those layers? By becoming aware of them. By catching yourself in the act of creation. Every single time you say something limiting, you're creating. Every single time you repeat a fearful thought, you're creating. Every single time you tell the story of your wounds, your failures, your bad luck, you're creating more of the same. Not because you're being punished, but because that's how the law works. The moment you become conscious of your words, you become conscious of your power. And the moment you become conscious of your power, everything shifts. I'm not asking you to pretend everything is perfect. I'm asking you to stop rehearsing disaster. When you stop rehearsing disaster, you create space for something miraculous to enter. You stop feeding the beast of fear and start nourishing the garden of faith. And faith, my dear friend, is not blind optimism, it's recognition of a law as dependable as gravity. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me absolutely convinced she would lose her home. The mortgage was overdue, the letters were piling up, and every thought was consumed with the image of being thrown out onto the street. She would wake up at 3 a.m, heart pounding, mentally packing her belongings. She was living the catastrophe before it had even occurred. I said to her what I'm saying to you now. Stop building that picture. Stop giving it life. Every time you imagine yourself homeless, you're sending that image out into the creative medium of mind. And mind doesn't judge whether your thought is good or bad, it simply says yes. So we began to work differently. Instead of focusing on what she feared, she began to speak her word. Infinite intelligence knows the way. My home is divinely protected. I see myself secure, paying my bills with joy and gratitude. At first, it felt like lies to her. But I reminded her, you've been lying all along, haven't you? You've been declaring bankruptcy before it happened. Now we're simply going to lie in the other direction, toward truth. Within 2 weeks, an unexpected opportunity arose. An old debt someone owed her was suddenly repaid money she had written off years ago. Then a temporary job appeared that covered the gap. And finally, a restructuring of her loan that made it manageable. Was it magic? No, it was law. The moment she stopped building the consciousness of loss, she opened the door to supply. You see, consciousness is everything. You cannot out-demonstrate your consciousness. If you are living in poverty consciousness, you will experience poverty no matter how hard you work. If you are living in consciousness of lack, you will find lack everywhere you turn. But shift your consciousness, shift what you are inwardly convinced of, and your outer world must rearrange itself to match. This is why affirmations alone won't work if you don't believe them. You can stand in front of a mirror all day saying, "I am prosperous," while secretly thinking, "This is ridiculous, I'm broke." The universe responds to what you truly believe, not what you say. I learned this the hard way when I was working with a woman who desperately wanted to heal a relationship with her estranged daughter. She came to me with all the right words she'd memorized, affirmations. She'd written letters she never sent. She'd done everything the books told her to do. But every time we spoke about her daughter, her face would tighten, her jaw would clench, and she'd say things like, "Well, I know she'll never forgive me, but I'm trying anyway." Do you see what was happening? Her words said one thing, but her consciousness, her deep inner conviction said something else entirely. And the universe isn't listening to your words. It's reading your frequency. So I told her, stop the affirmations. Stop trying to fix it from the outside. Go within and heal the belief first. You must become inwardly convinced that reconciliation is not only possible, but natural, inevitable, already done in the spiritual realm. It took months. She had to forgive herself first. She had to release the guilt she'd been carrying like a stone around her neck. But when she finally shifted, when her consciousness changed from "she'll never forgive me" to "love always finds a way," within 3 weeks, her daughter called. 3 weeks. After 5 years of silence. That's the power of consciousness. When you change within, the without has no choice but to follow. Now, here's where people get tripped up. They think changing consciousness means thinking positive thoughts. It doesn't. Positive thinking is lovely, but it's surface level. Consciousness is deeper. Consciousness is the soil in which your thoughts grow. You can plant all the positive affirmations you want, but if the soil of your consciousness is toxic with doubt, fear, and unworthiness, nothing will take root. Changing consciousness means changing your sense of identity. It means shifting from "I am someone who struggles" to "I am someone through whom good flows effortlessly." It means moving from "life is hard" to "life is for me." These aren't just thoughts you think, they're truths you embody. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to figure out how the change will happen. That's not your job. Your job is to hold the consciousness, to maintain the inner conviction, and let the invisible intelligence handle the details. Let me tell you what happens when you truly grasp this principle. Your whole energy shifts. You stop the exhausting mental work of trying to manipulate circumstances. You stop the anxious planning of every possible scenario. You stop trying to force people to behave the way you want them to. Instead, you rest in a deeper knowing. I once knew a woman who was absolutely convinced her business partner was trying to ruin her. She spent hours recounting his betrayals, gathering evidence, building her case. She was consumed by it. Every conversation came back to what he had done, what he was doing, what he would probably do next. I said to her, "You are giving this situation tremendous power. Every time you rehearse this story, you're setting the stage for more of the same drama." She looked at me like I'd suggested she ignore a tiger in her living room. But I continued, "What if you withdrew all your mental energy from this battle? What if you affirmed, 'There is no loss in divine mind. My good cannot be taken from me. I am under divine protection, and the right outcome now manifests.'" She was skeptical, but she was also exhausted. She agreed to try. The shift didn't happen overnight. For weeks, every time she caught herself spinning the familiar story, she would stop. She would breathe. She would repeat her affirmation. She deliberately redirected her mental energy. And here's what happened. The situation resolved itself in a way she never could have orchestrated. Her business partner left the company of his own accord, not because she forced him out, not because she gathered enough evidence against him, but because an opportunity arose elsewhere that was perfect for him. He left peacefully, even gratefully. She told me later, "I don't know what would have happened if I'd kept fighting. We probably would have destroyed the entire business in our battle. But when I let go and trusted, the divine intelligence found a solution that blessed us both. You see, the universe is infinitely more creative than your conscious mind. Your conscious mind can only rearrange known elements. It can only plan based on past experience. But divine intelligence can introduce completely new factors, unexpected allies, sudden openings where there seem to be only walls. Your job is to keep your consciousness clear and your faith steady. Your consciousness is your most valuable asset. It's the fertile ground where either weeds or flowers will grow, depending on what seeds you allow to be planted there. Every thought is a seed. Every word you speak waters those seeds. Every emotion you feel provides the sunshine or the storm. When you find yourself in a situation that seems unchangeable, the first place to look is not at the circumstances themselves, but at your habitual thoughts about them. What story have you been telling yourself? What limitations have you accepted as permanent? What beliefs have you inherited from others without questioning whether they serve your highest good? I knew a woman who had struggled with financial lack for years. She worked hard, she was skilled, but money seemed to slip through her fingers like water. When we talked, she kept saying, "I'm just not good with money. I never have been. My whole family has always been poor." Do you see what she was doing? She was affirming her limitation with every breath. She was claiming poverty as her identity. I asked her to stop for a moment and consider, was this truth? Or was this simply a story she'd been told so many times that she'd accepted it as truth? There's a vast difference between the two. Truth is eternal, unchanging, divine. A story is just something we've repeated until it feels real. She began to change her words. Instead of "I'm not good with money," she started saying, "Divine intelligence now governs my financial affairs. Money flows to me freely and joyfully. I am a perfect channel for God's abundance." At first, the words felt hollow to her. Her rational mind rebelled against them, but she persisted. Within 3 months, she received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she barely knew. Within 6 months, she'd been offered a position that doubled her income. Within a year, her entire financial situation had transformed. Not because the universe suddenly decided to favor her, but because she had changed the consciousness that was creating her reality. The fascinating thing about consciousness work is that it operates according to precise spiritual laws, as exact as mathematical equations. You cannot hold a consciousness of lack and receive abundance any more than you can plant apple seeds and harvest oranges. The harvest must correspond to the seed planted in consciousness. I once counseled a woman who came to me in absolute despair about her romantic life. She'd been single for 7 years and had convinced herself she was fundamentally unlovable. "No one ever chooses me," she said, her voice thick with resignation. "I'm always the friend, never the partner." As we talked, I began to see the invisible cage she'd constructed around herself. Every word she spoke reinforced her isolation. She told stories of rejection as though they were her identity rather than temporary experiences. She spoke of her single status as a life sentence rather than a current circumstance. "You're treating your singleness like a chronic illness," I told her. "And the universe cannot deliver a partner to someone who vibrates with the energy of unwantedness. Your consciousness is a closed door with a sign that says, 'I am not chosen.' And then you wonder why love doesn't enter." She looked startled, almost offended. But something in her recognized the truth. We began the work of dismantling her victim consciousness and building something entirely new. Not positive thinking painted over negativity, but genuine transformation of her foundational beliefs about herself and love. I had her write a list of every quality she possessed that made her an excellent partner. At first, she struggled. Years of rejection had trained her to focus exclusively on her perceived deficiencies. But slowly, with encouragement, she began to see herself differently. Loyal, thoughtful, great sense of humor, financially stable, genuinely interested in others. Then we crafted her affirmation. "I am chosen. Love seeks me out because I am inherently worthy of devotion." Simple, but targeted precisely at her core wound. She resisted at first. "But I don't feel chosen," she protested. "Doesn't that make it a lie?" "You're already lying," I said gently. "You're telling yourself you're unlovable, which is completely false. You're simply choosing which story to feed your consciousness. She looked at me with something like relief in her eyes. So I'm not being fake? No, I assured her. You're being truthful to the highest version of yourself. There's a profound difference between denial and affirmation. Denial says, I'm not sick, while coughing up blood. Affirmation says, I am claiming perfect health while taking inspired action toward healing. Within 3 weeks, she called me. A man she'd known casually for years had suddenly seen her differently. They were engaged 6 months later. Now, here's where people get tripped up with affirmations. They treat them like magical incantations, expecting instant results without any internal shift. They stand in front of the mirror saying, I am confident, while their entire body language screams insecurity. That's not affirmation, that's wishful thinking with words attached. True affirmation rewrites the subconscious script. Your subconscious mind is like a faithful servant. It believes everything you tell it with feeling and repetition. If you've spent 20 years telling it you're not good enough, it has built an entire infrastructure around that belief. Every thought pattern, every automatic response, every filter through which you see the world, all constructed to support that single idea. An affirmation isn't meant to argue with that infrastructure. It's meant to build a new one, brick by brick, repetition by repetition, until the new structure is stronger than the old. I watched this happen with a young man who stuttered. The stutter had been with him since childhood, and every speech therapist had told him it was neurological, permanent, unfixable. But I noticed something. He never stuttered when he sang. Never once. Your mind believes you're a stutterer, I told him, but only in certain contexts. It hasn't made that part of your singing identity. I gave him a simple affirmation. I speak clearly and confidently. Words flow through me with ease. But I don't, he protested. Not yet, I agreed. But your singing voice proves your body knows how. We're just teaching your mind to access that ability in conversation. He repeated this affirmation 50 times each morning and evening. Not mindlessly, with feeling, with conviction, as though he were describing a reality he could already touch. 6 months later, his stutter was 70% improved. A year after that, it was virtually gone. And I want you to understand something crucial here. It wasn't the words themselves that healed him. Words are simply vehicles. What transformed his reality was the times, feeling state times, he cultivated through those words. When he spoke his affirmations, he wasn't reciting hollow phrases, he was times becoming times, the version of himself who already spoke clearly, confidently, without struggle. This is the secret most people miss entirely. They think affirmations are about repetition, about drilling statements into their subconscious through sheer volume. But that's like trying to fill a cup by shouting at it. The real power comes when you speak with such emotional conviction that your entire being times resonates times with the truth of what you're declaring. I worked with a woman once who came to me absolutely devastated. Her marriage was crumbling, her husband had become cold and distant, and she was convinced divorce was inevitable. She'd spent months trying to fix him, nagging, pleading, analyzing every interaction, replaying their arguments in her mind until she couldn't sleep. I said to her, "Stop working on him. Start working on your consciousness." She looked at me like I'd lost my senses. But I had her do something that felt almost cruel at the time. I told her to stop all criticism, to stop all fearful thinking about him, and instead to spend 10 minutes each morning visualizing him as the loving, attentive husband she desired. "But that's not times true, asterisk," she protested. "I'd be lying to myself." And I said, "You're already lying to yourself. You're affirming lack, distance, failure, every moment you obsess over what's wrong. Why not try affirming what's times right, asterisk?" She resisted at first. Her mind fought her constantly. Every time she tried to visualize harmony, her intellect would jump in with evidence, his harsh words from yesterday, the way he'd ignored her at dinner, the coldness in his eyes. But she persisted, and something remarkable began to happen. She noticed that when she stopped arguing with reality in her mind, when she stopped rehearsing her grievances, the atmosphere between them began to shift. Not immediately, the universe doesn't work on our impatient timetable, but steadily. Her husband seemed less defensive. His tone softened. One evening, He asked her opinion on something he'd never consulted her about before. Small shifts, yes, but small shifts are how mountains move. This is what I want you to understand. Your persistent thoughts are creating your persistent conditions. If you're constantly thinking thoughts of lack, you're going to experience lack. If you're constantly thinking thoughts of unworthiness, you're going to attract experiences that confirm your unworthiness. The universe is a perfect mirror, and it's showing you exactly what you're holding in consciousness. But here's the magnificent truth that sets you free. You can change your thoughts right now, this very moment. You don't have to wait for conditions to change before you change your thinking. In fact, conditions can't change until you change your thinking. This is the divine order of creation. I've seen people transform their entire lives by transforming their mental habits. A woman came to me who had been struggling with her business for years. Every month was a battle, every client a struggle. She was exhausted, resentful, convinced the world was against her. I asked her, "What are you affirming about your business?" She looked at me blankly. Affirming? I'm not affirming anything. I'm just stating facts. It's hard. Clients are difficult. Money is tight. Do you see? She thought she was stating facts, but she was actually creating facts. Her words were decrees, her thoughts were orders to the universe. So we changed her inner dialogue. Instead of "business is hard," she began to affirm, "Divine intelligence guides my business and brings me perfect clients effortlessly." Instead of "money is tight," she declared, "infinite. Supply flows to me from expected and unexpected sources." Within 3 months, her business had completely transformed. New clients appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Old debts were suddenly paid. Opportunities opened that she'd never imagined. Had the external world changed? No, she had changed, and therefore her world changed to match her new inner state. Now, I want you to understand something profound about manifestation. Many people believe that when we speak of changing our inner state, we mean simply thinking happy thoughts or pretending everything is wonderful. But that's not what I'm talking about at all. True transformation occurs when you shift the very foundation of your belief system. It's not about covering darkness with light. It's about recognizing that the darkness was never real to begin with. It was a shadow cast by your own misconceptions. Let me share another story that illustrates this perfectly. I once worked with a man who had been struggling in business for years. Every venture he attempted seemed to collapse, just as it was gaining momentum. He came to me frustrated, convinced that the universe was conspiring against him. "Why does this keep happening to me?" he asked. "I work harder than anyone I know. I'm dedicated, I'm honest, I put in the hours. Yet others who barely try seem to succeed effortlessly." I looked at him carefully and asked, "Tell me, what goes through your mind as you approach success?" He paused, and then something remarkable happened. His face changed as he accessed a memory. "I get scared," he admitted. "I start thinking, this is too good to last. Something's going to go wrong. It always does." There it was, the pattern that had been sabotaging him all along. Success itself wasn't the problem. His expectation of failure was. Every time opportunity appeared, his subconscious mind, faithful servant that it is, rushed to fulfill his dominant expectation, that success couldn't last, that something would inevitably go wrong. We began working with affirmations specifically designed to rewire this belief. Not generic statements, but targeted words that addressed his specific fear. He declared daily, "I am divinely protected in success. My good is permanent and ever increasing. I now move from triumph to triumph." At first, he admitted these words felt hollow, almost absurd, but I encouraged him to persist, to speak them with conviction, even when conviction was absent. Words, you see, have creative power whether we initially believe them or not. They are seeds, and repetition is the water that helps them grow. Within months, something shifted. A business opportunity arose similar to many he'd had before. But this time, when that familiar fear crept in, he had new pathways in his consciousness. Instead of expecting collapse, he recognized the fear as an old pattern, thanked it for trying to protect him, and then consciously chose his new belief. That business thrived. And more importantly, he thrived. The change wasn't in his circumstances initially, it was in how he met those circumstances. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but what if I'm facing something truly difficult? What if it's not just a business challenge or a relationship issue? What if it's illness? What if it's loss? And I say to you, the principle doesn't change. The application becomes more tender, perhaps, more sacred, but the truth remains steadfast. I've worked with people who were told they had incurable conditions, and I've witnessed with my own eyes how the shift in consciousness became the turning point. Not through denial, never through denial, but through a deep, profound recognition that they were not their condition. They were not their diagnosis. They were spirit expressing in human form, and spirit knows no limitation. One woman comes to mind. She'd been given a dire prognosis. The doctors had done all they could, and she came to me not asking to be healed, interestingly enough. She came asking how to die peacefully. But as we talked, I asked her a simple question. What are you really afraid of? And she said, I'm afraid I haven't lived. I'm afraid I've wasted my life, pleasing others, and never discovering who I truly am. There it was. The real enemy wasn't the disease in her body, it was the disease of self-abandonment in her soul. So we began working not on healing her body, but on healing her relationship with herself. We spoke affirmations of self-love, self-worth, self-expression. We released resentments she'd carried for decades. We reclaimed parts of her that she'd given away. And something extraordinary happened. Her body began to respond. The symptoms that had been aggressive began to stabilize, then improve. But more than that, she began to live. She took up painting, something she'd always wanted to do. She spoke her truth to family members. She laughed more in those months than she had in years. Did she have a miraculous recovery? She lived 18 months beyond what anyone expected, and every single one of those months was filled with more life, more joy, more authenticity than the decades before. And when she did pass, it was peacefully, surrounded by her own artwork, having finally met herself. That's the power we're discussing here. It's not always about changing the external outcome to what our human mind thinks it should be. Sometimes it's about transforming our experience so completely that we meet whatever comes with grace, with presence, with love. I've seen this transformation happen in the most unexpected places. A woman once told me she'd lost her business, her home, and her marriage, all within one devastating year. She said she sat in her sister's spare bedroom one night and spoke these words aloud. I don't know why this is happening, but I trust there's something greater being revealed here. I open myself to receive the blessing hidden in this loss. She didn't say those words with certainty. She said them through tears, with a trembling voice. But she said them, and something shifted. Within months, she discovered a talent for helping other women rebuild after financial setbacks. The business she eventually created served thousands. She told me later, I would never have wished for that pain, but I also can't imagine who I'd be without having walked through it. The woman I am now, the one who can sit with someone in their darkest hour and truly understand she was born from those ashes. This is what surrender truly looks like. Not passive resignation, but active trust. Not giving up, but opening up. Not saying I don't care what happens, but saying I trust what happens, even when I don't understand it. And here's something beautiful I've discovered. When you practice this kind of surrender in small moments, it becomes available to you in large ones. When you practice trusting the process when you miss your train, it's there for you when you face truly difficult circumstances. When you practice seeing setbacks as setups and minor inconveniences, that same vision is there when life presents you with genuine hardship. This is spiritual muscle. You build it through practice, through repetition, through choosing trust over fear again and again in everyday moments. So start today. Start now. With whatever's in front of you that isn't going according to plan. With whatever disappointment, delay, or detour you're currently experiencing. Instead of fighting it, ask it, what are you here to teach me? What are you trying to show me? What door are you opening that I haven't noticed yet? And then this is crucial, be still enough to receive the answer. Because here's what most people miss. The answer rarely comes in the form you expect. You ask the universe a question, and you're waiting for a thunderbolt, a burning bush, a clear voice from the heavens. But the universe speaks in whispers. It speaks through coincidences that aren't coincidences at all. through a book that falls off the shelf at just the right moment, through a stranger's casual comment that lands in your heart like an arrow, through a dream you can't quite shake when you wake up. The universe is always answering. But are you listening? Or are you too busy telling your story of lack, limitation, and impossibility over and over again? I remember a woman who came to me, drowning in debt. She said, "I affirm prosperity every single day, but nothing changes." So I asked her to tell me about her day. And do you know what I discovered? Every morning, she affirmed abundance. And then she spent the rest of her day complaining about prices, worrying about bills, telling everyone who would listen how broke she was. She was planting seeds in the morning and pouring poison on them all afternoon. Your word is your wand, yes, but you can't wave it once and then spend the rest of your time contradicting yourself. The universe doesn't respond to your occasional optimism. It responds to your consistent vibration. So watch your words, not just in your formal affirmations, but in your casual conversation. When someone asks how you are, what do you say? When you talk about your finances, your health, your relationships, what story are you telling? Because that story, that's your prophecy. And you are a prophet, whether you realize it or not. Every word you speak is creating your tomorrow. This is why I tell people, be impeccable with your word. Don't say, "I can't afford it," when you mean, "I'm choosing to spend my money elsewhere." Don't say, "I'm terrible at this," when you mean, "I'm still learning." Don't say, "Nothing ever works out for me," when you mean, "This particular thing didn't work out the way I planned." Words are not neutral. They are charged with creative power. And the universe is listening to every single one. So, here's my challenge to you. Starting right now, today, become a guardian of your own words. Not in a way that makes you paranoid or afraid to speak, but in a way that makes you intentional, conscious. Awake to the power you're wielding with every sentence. I want you to catch yourself. When that automatic negative phrase starts to roll off your tongue, pause, just for a second. Feel the weight of what you're about to declare into existence. Then choose differently. Instead of, "I'm so stressed," try, "I'm working through a busy season." Instead of, "This is impossible," try, "This is challenging, and I'm figuring it out." Instead of, "I always mess things up," try, "I made a mistake, and I'm learning from it." Do you feel the difference? It's not about toxic positivity or denying reality. It's about refusing to give your difficulties more power than they deserve. It's about speaking to where you're going, not just where you've been. And here's something else I've noticed. The people who master their words master their lives. The ones who speak with intention, who refuse to casually curse their own journey, who treat language like the sacred creative tool it is. These are the people who seem to effortlessly attract opportunities, connections, and breakthroughs. It's not magic, it's alignment. When your words match your desires, when your speech reflects the reality you're building rather than the one you're leaving behind, you create a coherent signal that the universe can work with. You stop sending mixed messages. You stop sabotaging yourself with your own mouth. Think about the people you admire most. Listen to how they speak. I guarantee you, they're not constantly tearing themselves down in casual conversation. They're not flippantly declaring limitation over their lives. They've learned this secret, whether consciously or not. Your words are the bridge between your inner world and your outer reality. They're how the invisible becomes visible. They're how thought becomes form. And right now, in this very moment, you have the power to build a better bridge. Because here's what most people get wrong about affirmations. They think it's about repetition. They think if they just say it enough times, somehow the universe will cave in and give them what they want. But that's not how this works. It's not about how many times you say it. It's about the feeling state you're in when you say it. It's about whether you're speaking from faith or from fear, whether you're claiming or begging, whether you're affirming what already is in the spiritual realm or desperately hoping it might someday show up in the physical. There's a world of difference between those two states. When I say, "I am divinely guided and protected at all times," I'm not asking for guidance. I'm not hoping for protection. I'm recognizing what already exists. I'm acknowledging a spiritual truth that's always been there, whether I acknowledged it or not. The sun doesn't need your permission to shine. God's abundance doesn't need your approval to exist. Your only job is to stop blocking it with your doubt. And that's where most people sabotage themselves. They'll say the words, but in their heart they're thinking, yeah, right, as if that's going to help. They'll speak the affirmation, but their tone is dripping with sarcasm or desperation. You cannot fool the subconscious mind. You cannot trick the universe. The vibration you're sending out is always based on what you truly believe, not what you're pretending to believe. So if you're going to speak these words, speak them with conviction. Speak them as if they're already true, because they are. Speak them as if you're simply reminding yourself of a fact you temporarily forgot. I am abundant. I am guided. I am loved. I am whole. Not, I will be someday. Not, I hope to be, if things work out. I am, right now, in this moment. Because the spiritual realm doesn't operate in future tense. Everything exists in the eternal now. And when you speak from that place, from the consciousness of what already is, you collapse time. You bring the future into the present. You make the invisible visible. This is the real secret they don't teach you. You see, most people wait for evidence before they believe. They say, I'll believe it when I see it. But the spiritual law works in reverse. You must believe it before you see it. You must feel the joy of the answered prayer before the prayer manifests in form. This is why gratitude is so powerful. When you give thanks for something before it arrives, you are living in the consciousness of fulfillment. You are dwelling in the reality where your desire is already done, and the universe must respond to the state of consciousness you're holding. I've seen people transform their entire financial situation through this principle. A woman once came to me drowning in debt. Every day she woke up feeling the weight of what she lacked. I told her, stop declaring your debts. Start declaring your supply. She began to give thanks every morning for divine abundance flowing into her life. She didn't wait to feel grateful, she practiced gratitude as an act of faith. Within 3 months, unexpected checks arrived, new opportunities opened, and her debt began to dissolve. This wasn't magic. This was law. She changed her inner conversation, and her outer world rearranged itself to match. You must understand your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether your statements are currently true. It simply accepts what you repeatedly affirm and works day and night to make it manifest. If you keep saying, I'm always struggling, your subconscious says, yes, master, I'll create more struggle for you. But if you say, every day in every way I'm getting better and better, your subconscious goes to work orchestrating improvements. This is why the company you keep matters tremendously. If you surround yourself with people who speak limitation, fear, and doubt, their words seep into your consciousness. They water the seeds of negativity. But when you surround yourself with those who speak faith, possibility, and abundance, you are lifted into their vibration. I'm not saying you should abandon people who struggle. I'm saying you must guard your consciousness carefully. You can love someone and still refuse to adopt their limiting beliefs. You can have compassion without making their fear your own. The same goes for what you read, what you watch, what you consume, mentally and emotionally. Every word, every image, every thought is a seed. You are always planting. The question is, what kind of harvest do you want? Now, here's what will test your faith more than anything else: the waiting period, the time between planting and harvest. This is where most people fail. They see the bills stacking up, and they panic. They see the diagnosis, and they despair. They see the empty bank account, and they curse the process. But a true master of manifestation knows this. The darkest hour is just before dawn. When things look worst, that's often when your demonstration is closest. The pressure you feel, that's the universe rearranging itself to accommodate your new reality. Think of a woman in labor. The most intense contractions come right before birth. The pain doesn't mean something's wrong, it means something's about to be born. Your manifestation works the same way. When the pressure intensifies, when the old structures crumble, when everything seems to be falling apart, you're not going backward, you're breaking through. I've seen it 1,000 times. Someone speaks their word, they claim they're good, they stand firm in faith, and then everything gets worse. The job they had falls through. The relationship gets rockier. The money gets tighter. And they come to me and say, Florence, I thought this was supposed to work. I did everything you said, and now things are worse than before. And I tell them what I'm telling you now. This is not failure. This is progress. The old must be cleared away before the new can come in. You can't pour new wine into old wineskins. The universe is making space for your miracle. Your job during this waiting period is not to force, not to manipulate, not to figure out the how. Your job is simply this. Keep your eyes on the invisible supply. When you see lack, speak abundance. When you feel fear, declare faith. When doubt whispers, speak your word louder. This is not denial. This is not pretending problems don't exist. This is choosing which reality you're going to feed, the appearance or the truth. Every time you reaffirm your word, you're watering that seed. Every time you give thanks before you see the manifestation, you're accelerating its arrival. And here's the magnificent part. The universe is testing your certainty. It's asking, do you really believe this, or were you just saying words? When you pass this test, when you stand firm, regardless of appearances, the floodgates open. Your good rushes toward you with a force that astonishes you. I've seen this happen over and over. A woman once told me she'd been affirming abundance for months with no results. Then came her test, an unexpected bill, a financial setback that seemed to contradict everything she'd been declaring. She panicked at first, then remembered, this is the moment, She doubled down on her affirmations, refusing to speak lack, refusing to entertain fear. Within 3 days, money came to her from a source she'd completely forgotten about. The universe was simply making sure she meant business. This is why I tell you, the darkest hour is often just before dawn. When everything seems to be going wrong, when appearances scream failure, you are often standing at the very threshold of your demonstration. The test is fiercest, right before the victory. You must understand something crucial here. Your subconscious mind is literal. It has been receiving your words, yes, but it's also been watching your reactions. When you say, I am prosperous, but then panic over a bill, your subconscious receives mixed messages. It doesn't know which instruction to follow. But when you say, I am prosperous, and then remain calm in the face of apparent lack, your subconscious says, she's serious. She really sees herself as prosperous, regardless of what's happening right now. Let me rearrange everything to match that image. This is the power of persistence in faith. Not blind stubbornness, but intelligent persistence, knowing that your word is law in your universe and nothing can prevent its fulfillment except your own doubt. So when your test comes, and it will come, recognize it for what it is. It's not punishment. It's not proof that your methods don't work. It's the universe asking, how serious are you? It's your moment to prove to yourself that you really do believe what you've been saying. Stand firm, keep speaking your truth, refuse to be moved by appearances, and watch what happens. The universe doesn't respond to your worry. It responds to your word. When you stand in front of the mirror of life, declaring lack, affirming limitation, speaking poverty, that's exactly what gets reflected back to you. But the moment you change your word, the reflection must change. It has no choice. It's law. I've watched people transform their entire existence simply by transforming their vocabulary. They stopped saying, I can't afford it, and started saying, I'm open to abundance flowing to me now. They stopped saying, I'm always sick, and started affirming, divine health is my birthright and my present reality. Your words are not just sounds vibrating through air. They're creative forces. They're building blocks. Every time you speak, you're either constructing your prison or designing your palace. And here's what most people miss. You don't have to believe it at first. You really don't. Your belief will follow your word. Your faith will catch up to your declaration. Start speaking it, and watch how the feeling follows. That's why I keep saying, speak it now. Don't wait until you feel worthy. Don't wait until it makes logical sense. Don't wait until other people approve. Speak your word of truth now, and let everything else rearrange itself around that word. The woman who says, my right work manifests now, opens a door. The man who declares, I am guided by divine intelligence in all my ways, activates a power that was always there, just waiting for permission to move. This isn't about forcing anything. It's about aligning. It's about tuning your instrument to the frequency of truth. And truth is always abundance. Truth is always wholeness. Truth is always perfect supply. So where in your life have you been speaking the wrong word? Where have you been affirming the very thing you don't want? Catch yourself. Stop mid-sentence if you have to. Take that fearful statement and flip it. Turn that complaint into a declaration. Transform that worry into an affirmation of faith. You are more powerful than you've been taught to believe. Your word carries weight in the invisible realm where all things are formed before they appear. Use it wisely. Use it boldly. Use it now.